I had been in a relationship with this guy I thought I was going to marry. We were building a life together, and he died in a plane crash. I would have dreams about him. And then I would see people that looked like him on the street, and it was just my mind trying to go through that. And this was in between the darkest day where I was one of those people that I am the mistake. Almost drank myself to death, headed to emotional rehab. I got confronted by someone who was concerned for me and said, "We have reason to believe that he's cheating on you."
Imagine your boyfriend dies, and 5 days later you discover he was cheating on you the whole time. What does that do to your brain? What does it do to your relationships? What if you've already got attachment issues? What ride might that take you on? And how do you come out the other side a stronger person? Today we're talking to Stephanie Quayle, a woman who has been on that ride and has come out the other side. Excited to learn about her story. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
So let's actually dive right in. I want to know, so this book of yours, what's the backstory? What made you want to write something like that?
Well, it was a very tragic circumstance. I had been in a relationship with this guy I thought I was going to marry. We were building a life together, and he died in a plane crash.
Oh, man.
And this
yeah,
is
I read
back in
about
2009. And so I'm raising his daughter with him, or, we had this whole life planned, right? And that was on a Wednesday. He was piloting the plane, and 5 days later at the public memorial service, I discovered and then was confirmed that I wasn't the only woman. So I had essentially 5 days to grieve, barely, because you're in shock. I don't think I even touched grief. And then it went right into betrayal. So everything that followed that, there was so much that I knew that one day it would be a book. I didn't know if it would be, nonfiction, fiction, or what it would turn into, because at the time his daughter was only 12 years old. So this was a very protected story. It was also at a time where social media didn't exist. So I was insulated a little bit, those that knew of it, but it wasn't such a public facing experience. And so honestly, I did everything wrong until grief caught up with me in a big way, and we can unpack that more. And it wasn't until, I'm in this beautiful marriage, and I thought I had outrun everything, right? Did little bits of work here and there, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I've got this healthy relationship. I'm good. I found like a good man. And, but as you both know, you can't outrun things. You can only go through them. And so it caught up to me in a way that was very unexpected, in that, this young woman who I've been with ever since she was 12 years old, now as a grown-up, reached out, and she shared she was no longer going to carry the secret of all this. And she started exposing her feelings through her art. And what that gave me was permission in the most wildest of circumstance to go there as well. And so I went there in my music, and that album, On the Edge, led then to, exposing everything about it. And when I say everything, my responsibility in it, I was complicit. I made a lot of wrong decisions. And that ownership, I felt through the book, would be not only able to really show the whole picture of my experience, but also then have Keith Campbell, who's been researching narcissism for 30 years, to speak to it in the clinical sense that could then not only validate the reader's maybe feelings, but give much more understanding. Because, when you're in it, you don't know unless you don't know. And I did not know
What did you not know? What was it that was
Oh,
the big revelation at the end?
I think the big revelation, well, I mean, there's so many layers to this revelation because I found since the book that I'm in level 1 right now of this game called life. Like I thought I would be, further, but I think you really unpack yourself and then you realize there's so much more to unpack. At least that was the case for me. I think the biggest revelation was trusting myself
Ooh.
would have protected me from a lot of circumstances because I knew in my intuition, I knew, but I overrode that in so many ways and so many, the relationship that followed it, which was also toxic. And then also in business relationships.
Mm.
I also really got comfortable with being where my feet are. And that if something is not what it should be, then I'm not going to wait for it to potentially get there. And that was something I was living in, kind of this state of fast forward of like, oh, it'll get better when, versus like, no, this is very unhealthy. And so I've been able to implement those in my friendships, relationships, business ships, family ships, all the ships, to where, I see things for what they are, not what they could be. And that's given me a tremendous amount of just, oh, this is what it feels like when things are just, so honest and authentic and transparent. And you're not trying to make things better than what they are. And I was making excuses for a lot of people.
Hey guys, just pause for a second. I know that here on this program, we talk a lot about attachment issues and about fixing them and how great that feels. But I know that a lot of you in the comment sections have told me that you feel overwhelmed and intimidated at the idea of trying to go through and fix your attachment challenges. Some of you are in relationships and you don't know how to help your partner repair their attachment, share their feelings, and be more connected to you in a productive and loving way. For those of you out there who are struggling, I want you to know that we offer a special program designed to work with you on a strict schedule, even if you only have an hour a week. The Attachment Repair Program is designed to help us, all of us certified attachment specialists inside the program, walk with you through your journey on a measured step-by-step process for fixing your attachment issues. This is great for individuals or for couples who are wanting to overcome their attachment issues and never be haunted by those problems ever again. So if you're afraid of rejection, if it's hard to share your needs, and if you're feeling stuck and nothing else has worked, join the Attachment Repair Program today, and let's work together on building a great relationship for the rest of your life. So many of the women in our audience right now are at home resonating immensely with your story because they stop listening to themselves, or they never listen to themselves. They let other people tell them so many lies, and they don't want to call out those lies and hurt anyone's feelings. They don't want to be abandoned. They don't want to be left behind. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't feel important enough to call somebody out, and they just hope it will work. And so many of them have had that trust betrayed over and over. It sounds like you went through what we call a double trauma, where you lose somebody and it's a traumatic event, and then your brain says that really hurts, and then your brain goes into a cycle where it says, how do I make sure I never get hurt again? And then wham, 5 days later you get betrayed and hurt again with a complication. That's a second trauma and a second set of, how do I make sure I never get hurt again? Well, I'm trying to figure the first one out. Like, wait, stop bothering me. And
You
your
pretty
brain
much know me already
yeah,
very well.
see, it's a double trauma, and it takes so long to unpack, especially if you also have to learn to trust yourself. What was the first step you took? I'm always curious with people when they do this process. What was the first step you took to start either trusting yourself or going outside of yourself and making a fuss a little bit more?
Yeah, no, that's great. So I didn't do the work in between the first this relationship that I'm speaking of that ended tragically, and then the one that followed, which was like 9 months later.
Yep.
And I was just in no state. I had no business being in anything near a relationship. I should have just like been locked away. And I say that jovially, but I hadn't done the work. I wish that I would have known that work is going to hurt like hell, and it's going to be the hardest part, but that is how you get through it. But I was pushing avoid, avoid, avoid. And so the second relationship that I was in afterward, I ended up being met with almost a carbon copy of the scenario. But this was, I got confronted by someone who was concerned for me and said, we have reason to believe that he's cheating on you. And my brain didn't go, what's wrong with him? I went, what's wrong with me? And that led to one of the darkest nights of my life, because it's not that I wanted to die, but I was so done hurting. But I was hurting the wrong way. I wasn't hurting to heal. I was just hurting to hurt. And because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. So for me, it was, I just can't be in this kind of pain. And that was a very dangerous night. And I'm very grateful to still be here, because others haven't had the next day. And so that was an awakening. And it was, when they had like the Vanderbilt Wellness Suicide Watch at my house, it was not my house, my friend's house where I was staying. And, I went to go get a knife for like the bread, or something. And they had been put up, and that image rocked me, that they were so afraid for my life that they had moved the knives. And that just, that crushed me for me. And then that really kind of started, okay, I have to get help. I am not strong enough to do this without real help. And so I sent myself to what I call emotional rehab. And I worked with psychologists to try to understand, because I was fixated on what's wrong with me, because I keep doing the same thing. Like, bad people are bad people. Bad people happen. And there's all kinds of stuff we can talk about that. But I was the one that kept staying in those. And so that relationship really took much longer than it should have. Of course, shouldn't. But it took the time it took. And it took doing that, going to grief counseling, and really understanding the magnitude of the trauma. But honestly, I didn't really get it until I wrote the book, because it was black and white on paper. And the magnitude of trauma, I think it seems to be that, like, we tend to be very disposable with trauma. Like, we get the clicks and then we move on. And I hadn't given myself the time. So writing the book, I was really able to like sit in it and really sit in it. And I have a really amazing husband that was, right there going, hey, you do whatever you have to do, because this is your through way. Like, this is your through. Like, the songs can be interpreted. The black and white words that are mine can't.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm curious if I can ask you, and I swear there's a reason for this. Did you grow up in such a way that you understood how relationships worked, or were you just constantly trying to survive and try to navigate through by pleasing other people?
1000% nailed it. Ding, ding, ding. Survivor here.
Yeah, as well, survivor.
Yeah. My parents got divorced when I was 3. And then both moved on, got married, and then went through another divorce on my mom's side. So I am a middle child, people pleasing. I'm definitely the problem. How can I fix the situation, kid?
Do you also have kind of a tough outer exterior though? Do you push through pretty good? Are you good with business, good with finance?
Yeah.
And more of like an avoidant kind of person too sometimes?
Yeah. I'm a find a way.
Yeah.
Which has also found me ways into staying too long, right?
There's probably, so I don't know how much you know about myself, but I'm updating the field of attachment theory, because there's been a gap for women like yourself that nobody could really help or even classify. There's just pure anxious avoidance where you are emotionally dependent, you collapse, and you're just scared all the time, but you don't usually have an avoidant exterior or a hardened survivor exterior also. It's not that second layer, so you won't fit neatly into that. And you'll look at avoidant women and say, well, maybe, but I don't really feel that way and I don't act that way, so it won't really resonate. There is the disorganized style, the blend of the two, but they usually paint it as wildly chaotic, out of control, one night stands every other night, and just like no case for monogamy whatsoever. And you sound like a very monogamous kind of person. So I've had to create almost from scratch a new attachment style just to describe it. It sounds like women like yourself, high intelligence, very creative, very tough and savvy, but on the inside, that sense of what's wrong with me? I'm the problem. Like bad people happen. Like bad people happen, and they're going to do that. And it's not always me, but it is always me, and I need to control me. And that quiet sense of something's off with myself. I call it quiet disorganized style, and it's rare, but nobody understands it, and you will not find it anywhere. And so many women, they are struggling so silently with this right now, where they are tough, hardened survivors with avoidant traits, but that heart on the inside of compassion for other people and almost over compassion.
Yeah, it's super interesting because when, I've been in entertainment now, singing and albums and all the things for so long, no one knew this story, right? No one knew these chapters. So I would just not, because if I did, then I had to really go full exposure. And one part protecting a young girl, this was her dad, no matter what, truth. And then also like, once I say this publicly, I can't unsay it. And so what was really interesting just during this process is like how many times I would say, it's all right, we're going to get through this on a public facing stage, right? And I think the audience, and I don't know, this is just me overanalyzing myself like I do, picked up on something not being said. And so when I presented the book or the album and then the book, there was a lot of shock. There was a lot of not pushback, but just, oh, because I've always presented so like, hey, we got this, we're going to get through this. And it was really interesting to be able to now, and I'm not by any means, I'm a work in progress and will be until my last breath, walk with more matching of my insides with my outsides, if that makes sense, because I'm not hiding a huge part of what makes me me.
Yeah. The quiet disorganized people usually will almost never tell their story because they are so concerned about everybody else involved that they will not tell their own story. It's because it's an abundance of compassion because they know what it's like to not feel loved. They know what it's like to not feel safe. They are constantly caring for other people and never even giving a thought to their own self-care. They're like, oh, my arm's broken, the bone's sticking out. Well, that's going to impact how fast I can make dinner tonight for my family. That's really like that hardened duct tape. Yeah, duct tape it together. Yeah. That's that hardened survivor state. But what's been fascinating is in the work that I've done when individuals with this style, when they just learn mechanically, what do other people want? How do relationships work? It sounds like what you've been doing. What do people want from me? What do I need from them? What's okay? How do I talk? When you just mechanically learn all those skills you didn't get as a kid and it just clicks, they just thrive as you're thriving. It just goes. That's amazing to see.
I'm so excited for you to have figured this out and for anyone listening that's going to be able to, it's like a Rubik's Cube, and it is, I know people like have all these different ways of saying that, but there is an effortlessness that comes when you have the mechanics.
Yep.
And I experience life in such a sweeter way because I've turned off the noise.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Andre, you and I talk a lot about how like the top performing men in the world are usually avoidant men, but the top performing women, especially in creative fields, but also financial fields, they're actually quiet, disorganized. They have avoidant traits, but they have compassion and low self-esteem.
I really like the Rubik's Cube idea because the goal of a Rubik's Cube is to be perfect in every way, but each side is, its own little facet, right? And when those sides become to intermingle, they start to contradict, they break the picture, right? But here you can be, a wife, you can be a singer, you can be I don't know if you have children, maybe you have a mom, you can be these things and you can be one side at a time without them having to mix together. And that's an avoidant trait. And I have the same avoidant trait myself. Compartmentalization. And that is probably the biggest bane of my existence, is the feeling that I can't be 100% of one thing at every single time. I have to be a little bit of everything in these various combinations. So I love this Rubik's Cube idea, because it's truly this desire to be just you or a particular part of you in context, and allowing yourself to experience those contexts and different sides and facets of yourself is so beautiful. So that's a fantastic example. Now, I'm very curious. You said you're in an amazing marriage from what I heard. And how did that happen? What was the process that led you from this completely broken state where it was like almost the end, and you got yourself out of that darkness and into something wonderful?
From this type of man to this type of man.
Yeah.
Because that's such
Oh, man. Well, I'm a very faithful person, so I think a lot of it had nothing to do with me, if not all. He is extremely patient. He couldn't be more different than all the others. And I think he saw me unconditionally. Even for, our first interaction, I was playing a show in North Carolina, and this was in between the darkest day, right, where I was almost drank myself to death and headed to emotional rehab. I meet this precious man, but I'm in my toxic relationship with number 2, right? And I'm making my way to this place called, in my mind, that I've named emotional rehab. So at that time, he had a girlfriend. I had a toxic boyfriend, and I was very fragmented. And it just led to, well, let me know how that goes, because this is what I giggle about, the difference between men and women, and all our women listeners, they will crack up with this, I think, as you will. So he asked me a question as I'm like leaving North Carolina after the show. And he goes, so where are you headed? Simple question. Well, I took that as he wants to know where I'm going. So I told him I'm in this relationship with this guy, and he's been, accused of cheating on this girl, and blah. And I just unpack it all, right? And he was so kind, and it's like, oh, okay. Where are you headed? Like, what state are you going to? And I'm like, the difference. And so we stayed in touch. I finally got out of that toxic relationship. And then it led to a real honest conversation. I had no try. I had no game. I had no woo. All my tricks were gone the moment I opened my mouth,
I was going to ask, were you more honest in that moment than you usually would have been?
Yeah.
I was going to say, so many of my quiet, disorganized women, they are silent, and someone asks them, how do you feel? And they're like, I'm good. I'm just good. And they don't share anything because they don't want to bother anybody or impose or share secrets and hurt somebody. But then other people, healthy people, say, oh, you're not interested in talking to me, that you look disinterested. So then they leave. And then unhealthy people come and they're like, how you doing? And you're like, fine. And they're like, you're too timid to do anything. So the chaotic people rush in. The healthy people think you don't care. So in that moment, you were just honest. And that's what he saw. That was the shift. That's what he needed from you, was that moment of real honesty so he could see you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And he's just, and again, like patient, because I have been wrestling with myself, right? Because again, I avoided, I'm like, oh, I'm married now. Like, my vows also crack me up. We're almost to our 10 years of being married in June. And my vows were like, now is everything's great. So here's to the great times and the better times and the best of times and the good. And he's, I'm his second wife, his last, but his second wife, and he's just like, not, again, he's such a Southern gentleman, not saying, like, well, but storms are going to still happen. It's how he handled the storm. So it was really, it's been really fun for me to be able to share myself with him in real time. It's like almost I was reliving, my prequel to get to my now with him, which is so healthy.
It is. To be
And
able to
some
go
people are
through
like,
it.
wasn't it boring? I'm like, no.
Good
It's
grief, no.
fantastic.
Well, and going through all of that and then seeing it again, like what would it have been like if I had had someone that cared about me and I could trust and I could help? Like that's such a powerful thing for you to like see proof and see see an example of what that love looks like in those moments. That's amazing.
It's really cool. And also, I think that I think that I have found that if I have trust, you have me. If I don't trust you, it doesn't like love has no impact.
Right.
You know, it just doesn't even touch
Loyalty
it.
is everything.
Loyalty is everything.
Really, really in
Yeah.
relationships, especially now, especially when it's so easy to be disloyal and especially when it's so easy to just hide and cheat and do everything. It's really matters a lot. Now, I was kind of curious. So your husband, do you think he was securely attached when you guys met, or did he also have some attachment problems?
No, I think he figured out his stuff very secure. As I'm learning about secure attachment, I'm like, oh,
There's his picture right there in the definition.
it's like dictionary.
They just have his photograph. Like that's it.
DSM-5, yeah.
Right.
It's just really interesting too. Again, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the words to match with these, these feelings and things to go, okay, am I feeling? Is this a feeling or is this real? Like, is my gut being like protective of me or is this, a past thing? So it's now we have now we have access to information. And I just think about how, to your point, like how many people are suffering in silence because they don't know where to start. And I just found the way to start was by writing it down.
So many, like I said, so many of the women right now watching this are at home, and I know they're resonating with this because a lot of our audience is more the quiet, disorganized type.
As we're finding out.
Where they have a blend, as we're finding out. And your story is so huge for them because they don't, like you probably couldn't have pictured at some point, like, oh, I could just be different than I am. I can just talk. I can just share. Like what help them understand at home, if you would, please, if you've been so open, and thank you. What's a daily difference from before that's different today? Maybe in your relationships or in conversations or in decision making that you do. What's something different that they would be like, what? Really? That you would not have expected? What has surprised you?
I think, and this just kind of like showed up again, which I thought was so interesting because I caught myself. And you'll know exactly what I mean by that. I think I am such a jump in, say yes, don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even think about it. And I found myself, going, I want to, and this is exactly what I said. I was like, I want to say yes, but I want to take a couple days. Tell me when, is this, I think a lot of times we think things are exploding deals, right? Especially in business, you think it's and I think that's a very manipulative thing to do to people, right? Be like, well, if you can't, there's someone else, right? Now, then you're going to have to go with someone else. And so that's been something that's been really new for me is I think about myself. How does this hit all? Is this a win-win for everyone that's involved, including me? Which for so long, it would just be the last thought. And really treating myself like I've treated others for years, where I would put everything on the table for them. And, and being able to say, when do you need an answer? And then honoring that person's time frame, right? But also honoring my own to really go, okay, what's the impact that this has? And am I doing the best job of serving from the standpoint of from my business, from my efforts and all that? Am I making positive impact? Or is this just kind of a lateral decision where it's kind of like it doesn't have anything? And so that's been a really fun experience to give myself what I have given to others. It's nice.
What's the biggest surprise you've had that your husband wants from you that the other men either didn't want from you or that you never knew? What's the biggest thing he wants from you that's a surprise?
Joy. He just wants me to have joy. He is the closest thing. When I think of unconditional love, I really only think of, God. And so to have someone so willing and patient and just want the best for me, that's hard to fathom. And I think it took a long time to believe him.
How long did it take?
God, that's a good question.
They're at 10 years now, so 9.5.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it probably was in the last few years that my shoulders just kind of went like, no, I get it. I get it. There's just a difference in existing, a being versus trying, with the first relationship with the guy that died in the plane crash, I was in a constant state of, well, I'll try this. Well, I'll try that. Well, maybe if I'm thinner, or maybe if I'm stronger, or maybe if I'm more this or more that. I was never just relaxed.
A lot of guessing.
Yeah. And not really going like, hey guy, maybe we don't need to be looking at me. Yeah. So I guess I would say relaxed joy is the biggest surprise. And it catches me in moments because I'm like, wow, this is what healthy feels like. Like what, when you ask, like, what would my life have been, right, had I had these tools now? And I'm just so grateful that I have them now, because I think a lot of times we feel like we're out of time and that it's too late for us. And I think that narrative is, well, are we allowed to swear on this show?
Absolutely.
I think it's total bull.
Nice.
And we decide, we have so much more control over that. And when I think about how much time I lost, on the flip, I've gained so much, because if it does not have to do with what I can do, not like from a business, just in life, it's not for me. I don't have conversations that don't have purpose.
The urgency that first half provides, because I get so many clients, Andre, I've told you this, they come to me when they're 65, 70. My oldest client was 78 and terminally ill and on their way out.
How incredible though, to seek the information.
Well, and all of her children were all fighting with each other. Her family was really fractured, and she was on her way out, and she said, I have like a year, and we need to figure this out. So it's never too late. The amount of living and loving she did in that year, so was so healing for her children, her adult children, and her grandchildren, and her great grandchild who had just been born. It was so healing that in 1 year of transformation, her whole family system was changed forever, and she could go peacefully from that moment. Like, it's never too late. I don't want anyone to ever think it's too late.
So I wanted to ask you, Stephanie. So one big thing that's been so popular in the conversation around attachment and avoidant attachment, especially disorganized and such, is the role of feelings. Feelings at work, feelings in relationships. What value were feelings to you when you were maybe earlier in your attachment journey, and how did you see them?
Oof, man, I think they had way too much power over me.
Okay. Was it your feelings or their feelings?
I would say my feelings had, like, if it wasn't going on out here, inside it was, explosive. And when you're asking, like, what's changed as well? Cortisol. I am not interested in other people's stuff because it raises my cortisol. So I'm more of a conduit, if that makes, like, in a conversation, I don't then carry the other person's whatever. And I think for a long time, I thought I had to carry it, even in exchange, like, oh, I'll carry this for you, which is a terrible thing for me to do, because then that weight, like, really got unbelievably heavy, right? So where I now can listen to a conversation and it not affect my cortisol as much. Sometimes family can raise cortisol.
It happens.
But other things that, that didn't deserve my physical makeup being impaired, essentially. I think that I don't give as much credit to words when it comes to other people's feelings, right? Wrong, like wrong or good or whatever. It's more of, I'm much more aware of their action and what they don't say.
Mm-hmm.
It's very telling.
Yeah, and it's kind of the way that I swing as well, because like in business and relationships, like there's a small circle of intimate relationships that I understand, and there's everybody else. And for everybody else, like you can say whatever you want, you can feel whatever you feel. It doesn't have to affect me. And Adam and I have been talking about this, and avoidant attachment is the predominant style amongst almost every executive, top performing, and in the male space. I guess there's also some disorganized as well that happens, but it's much more rare in men.
It's usually just raw avoidant men just go and they dissociate from every feeling they've ever had and just roll into life pretty hard.
And that helped me through a lot of tougher parts of life. And now I'm kind of having to walk myself back from that and kind of understand the value of having a deeper, more emotional connection. And it's interesting to me that for you, it was the kind of the opposite end, but it was more internal, that you were the ones having these feelings. And that's that style. That is the style.
That's the quiet, disorganized style. Like I said, no one has ever talked about this. And it's so many women who
because they're quiet.
Yeah, well, because they're quiet. You're invisible. You're like, she's got it together. Everything's really great. Till your head falls off. Hey guys, just pause for a second. I know that here on this program, we talk a lot about attachment issues and about fixing them and how great that feels. But I know that a lot of you in the comment sections have told me that you feel overwhelmed and intimidated at the idea of trying to go through and fix your attachment challenges. Some of you are in relationships and you don't know how to help your partner repair their attachment, share their feelings, and be more connected to you in a productive and loving way. For those of you out there who are struggling, I want you to know that we offer a special program designed to work with you on a strict schedule, even if you only have an hour a week. The Attachment Repair Program is designed to help us, all of us certified attachment specialists inside the program, walk with you through your journey on a measured step-by-step process for fixing your attachment issues. This is great for individuals or for couples who are wanting to overcome their attachment issues and never be haunted by those problems ever again. So if you're afraid of rejection, if it's hard to share your needs, and if you're feeling stuck and nothing else has worked, join the Attachment Repair Program today, and let's work together on building a great relationship for the rest of your life.
It is so fascinating. And when you're talking about your client, the woman who was 78, I just think about her because I think about how me taking the actions for myself has impacted my family, just from being an example, to not saying this is what others should do, just sharing this is what I did and this is what I'm doing.
This is what others could do, even.
Sure. And it just is, it's very gratifying from the sense of it's terrifying to be vulnerable. And then you get a message from someone, I'm sure you both have experienced all kinds of this, but to be that vulnerable and share it and someone hear it and then that really give them either the strength to leave or the strength to start or the strength to just go, actually, I'm the one doing this. And that, personal responsibility that comes with when you look at yourself, like writing a book or writing in your journal and you go and read it back, you can't really, unless you just burn the pages, you can't, it was there. I had no way to avoid what I had written, and I'd go back and I'd be like, whoa, this is not light.
How much of that made its way into your music at the earlier stages in your career?
It didn't.
Not at all?
I was very protective of that.
Why? Why is it so valuable?
Well, I don't know that it's valuable. I think I just didn't have the maturity to be able to navigate the emotion of, the song and then share this. Now it's like I can go all places in my songs and kind of, leave it up for the listener to interpret it. And then like, is this a true story too?
Wouldn't you like to
I
know?
have been able to sing other people's written song that has, deep, beautiful meanings. But for myself as a writer, it really was the On the Edge album that broke me open to then, it was kind of a broken Rubik's Cube at that time, like put it back together and go, okay, all my facets matter. And I don't have to be this constant party for everybody and cheerleader and biggest, I'm allowed to feel what I'm feeling. And, it's one of those things that when people ask you how you are, they don't really want to know.
I always do.
And,
I always expect an honest answer.
Do you?
Always.
Interesting.
well, it's like, people get so comfortable with it. Like, hey, how are you? And it's like a hello. It's like an extended hello.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of an interesting, I tried this at university, at a college I was speaking at and performing at a few weeks ago. And I went around the room because I really wanted to know how everyone was doing. Because, I'm about to share my stuff. I want to know, like, what's the temperature? And I'm like, I'm just going to try this because it was tried on me during an interview. And I said, what's good with your day? And to watch the mechanics, of like the hell, and how when you tell certain ways, it's like creating or reflecting or however it goes. I don't know all the rules, but you know what I'm saying? To watch the moment and the time it took to get to what's good with your day, it was really cool and engaging, and was fun to watch people have to try to find something good, even in the smallest, one was like, I woke up today. I'm like, yes. One was like, I didn't sleep through my alarm, college students. It was so sweet, but it was really interesting, just to be able to take that kind of topical layer that a lot of us get subjected to when we're having, conversations with new people, to kind of get somewhere further faster because you don't get a lot of time. So it was really interesting to experience that. And I think about that a lot. Like, what's good with my day? I like that.
Practicing gratitude.
So what other behaviors have you learned as you're going through this transition? And the reason I ask is because attachment doesn't just exist in your mind, it's in your actions more than anything, right? It is the opportunity through which you connect, but it's a long journey because you have to unlearn and then relearn behaviors. What were some of the behaviors you learned that helped you get there?
So I think I've been unlearning fight or flight. I've been learning that precious time in between. Is it reaction and response?
Yep.
Yeah.
Stimulus and reaction. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. There we go. The pause, the power of like, just
pause.
don't speak yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just hold it. Just wait. And I also refer to this just self-control, that has been, I don't want to say this in a, any kind of way other than it's kind of a great tactical self-preservation technique. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but for me, what it's done is it's kind of given me the full view versus being a very responsive person and very reactive person. And for a lot of years, that was very like aggressive and angry and negative, and or like it was like, gosh, I could, after the toxic, I could, sing you a cheating heartbreak country song and be like, this love stuff is a bunch of horse manure, it's just such like, but yeah, I'm really sitting in myself and my, which I didn't do before. I mean, I would never be present. I would never be right here with you right now. I would be thinking about all the forward thinking, right?
And that's the biggest thing that most people that overcome this, the biggest shock to them is that they can just ask other people questions. And a lot of them, they'll come into my sessions and they're like, Adam, I need to figure out what my husband is saying. What is he thinking? What should I do? And my answer is always, have you asked him yet? And they go, huh? And I said, have you just gone to him and said, hey, I noticed you did this and I'm kind of curious about it. And it's kind of making me a little nervous, like guessing and thinking, what are you doing? What can I do? How can I help? And they're like, I can just ask. And I'm like, you're supposed to. It's not just that you can. That's the job. Go ask. And they do. And they do. And they come back and they're like, it went really well. He didn't get mad at me for asking. He didn't lie. He just told me. And I said, what next? Well, we just solved the problem. And I said, how much the rest of the day did you spend overthinking? 0. Yeah.
Yes.
Now imagine if you just ask questions forever. Just always ask a question. If you're ever always overthinking, that is a sign that you need to ask a question. Go ask a question and you'll never overthink again. And it's so much freedom. It sounds like that's happening in your marriage.
1,000%. It's, I think also unlearning the habit of creating narratives that don't exist. Right? Like that is just I have also become obsessed with how precious and finite time is, to where it's like, does this belong in my brain thinking about it? Yes or no? Doesn't matter. Yes or no? And like, okay, gotta go, gotta stay. Like, that's new territory for me. And it gives you time. I feel like when people are like, oh, I have no time. I'm like, how? There's so much time, and I was the opposite. I think I was 18. I think it was my 18th birthday when I called my mom crying, saying, I'm a failure. I haven't done anything with my life. Now I laugh. As a 45-year-old, I'm like, you ding-a-ling. I'm I'm running out of time. And I was in that state of, what could be versus like, man, how precious is right now getting to spend time with my 2 new friends in this conversation and just learn from each other and be present. And it's really incredible how much time is no longer part of the conversation in a negative sense.
But it's also time because it is actually the opportunity to enjoy that time. Like now there's a metric, the absence of pain is not happiness, right? That's such a very important realization most people do not have. And people who are in that activated parasympathetic nervous system setting, to them, they measure happiness based on how much they hurt. So if they hurt a lot, that's not a bad day. If they hurt a little bit, it's a good day. But the concept of not just not hurting at all, which is their like apex of happiness. How was your day? Nothing hurt today.
Yeah.
You're like, wow. There's actually a side of the scale.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. And there's like a whole side of the scale where, time actually doesn't just stop. It starts working backwards, right? When you start having these magical moments, you can spend 10 minutes on a conversation that feels like a lifetime, or you can spend, 10 minutes in a conversation that feels like a year. Like we have such control over the dimensionality of time that it's all related on the nervous system. It's what neurotransmitters are
interesting. Yeah, I said this. Well, was it today or yesterday? I think it was today. And I said, I think it's today. Who knows? Doesn't matter. It's possible. So I think to what you're saying is so profound because like, it's not an all or nothing. It's like, I can be completely heartbroken and completely overjoyed simultaneously. There can be something going on and it kind of goes back to like, man, and that's just kind of life. You hear someone has a bad prognosis and it's crushing. And in the same day, you can have incredible news and have these 2 kind of worlds happening at the same time. And I think for me, it's acceptance, right? It's like, man, they don't take away from each other. They both exist, but they kind of both exist together. Does that kind of make sense?
100%. So I've a little context on me. I've been married 16 years. We have 5 kids, so it's a busy household, and I'm trying to raise them to not measure their day like that. Like, did you have any pain at all today? Well, then it was a bad day. I'm trying not to do that. We'll ask each other at the end of the day, and my wife's been great at this. She teaches our daughters to ask when dad comes out from his office and he's talking, ask him how his day is. And my girls go, Daddy, how's your day? And I say, well, it's a good day. And I tell them something cool that happened, right? And then I ask them, how's your day? And if anybody says, oh, it's a bad day, or will this happen? And they list something bad, I say, well, it sounds like a hard day, but what else has happened today? And we just go through the list. I don't try to shut them down and make them be positive. We just go through the list of what happened today. And by the time we get to the end, we could say, well, it was a hard day, but was it a fun day? Was it a good day? Hard and good at the same time. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to train them into that when they're young so that they don't end up like that where they're, if my day had a moment of pain, it was terrible. That's never going to be a day. That's never going to be a day.
Yeah. No, I just think about your babies and how blessed to have that kind of upbringing. Because when we think about, our parents and our parents' parents, there's so much transference of stuff that, that's been really fascinating to learn too, as I've unpacked myself. It's like, man, you start to see your parents as humans, and the impact of, their own upbringings and childhoods and not being able to have conversations like this.
Yes. Yeah. The last 100 years in the West, especially in America, have been so hard on families and the transmission of knowledge and the transmission of skills. You had 18-hour work days. You had families breaking apart. Everything just completely fell apart. So there was no transmission of skills or knowledge. Most parenting today is just a trauma response. And then we're overcorrecting the other way, becoming super permissive and sweet to become your child's best friend. And we are having to find a middle ground to build.
Because there's no agreement on value, right? We don't even know what we value as, not even just as a group of people, but even as a family, not even as a country, but just even as a single little unit, even as a couple. Most couples have no idea what the other person's values are. They never have that conversation.
Or even what they want. Most wives or husbands can't even go to each other and say, our marriage is not really where I want it to be. Is it where you want it to be? If it's not, can we fix it? What can we do?
So there was a fascinating statistic, and the statistic came out just right at 2012. And back then, the situation with families was better than it is today.
Yeah.
And Facebook made a statement that in 100 clicks, on 100 likes, they can predict what a person wants or likes better than their spouse. In something like 94% of cases. It was crazy. Because what happens is that people would actually be honest on platforms like Facebook and social media, actually liking things, but they wouldn't be honest at home. Neither either sharing nor making the time.
Your phone knows you better than your spouse.
Right?
That's creepy.
Yeah, I do love to, we do this at the end of the year, and I just say to my husband, like, okay, how can I be a better partner, a better, where, he's seen so much transformation. He's very forthcoming about that. But I think it's also just be like, we can always grow. We can always, find another place where the phone doesn't get in the conversation over you, and it's fun to have those conversations and be willing to hear the words back, not as criticism.
Right? Was it nerve-wracking to ask for the first time?
Oh, I'm sure it had to be.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What made you ask the first time that happened?
What made you trust him enough to ask? Because that's a lot of trust to put in a person.
Just, I saw, through the course of doing all of this work that I hadn't done it all right with him. And so I saw a lot of my, my pain and my reactivity and him being the impact point, right? And so that, like, as I started getting it, I'm like, oh man, okay, more, give me more. And I didn't take it personally because I just took it as like, okay, these are his feelings and this is what he's getting from me. And one of the things is I said to him, I'm like, man, if I miss something, tell me, because I want to make things right. And you're so kind and so protective of me. Thank you, but go for it. Because I'm on a mission. I don't want the lack of knowing to be the reason that then I don't have the understanding to be able to implement real change. And I just like me a whole heck of a lot more now than I ever have, that those conversations don't scare me anymore.
It's such an overwhelming amount of trust. And I'm going to use the word submission, right? It's such an amount of trust and submission to somebody to say, I trust you enough to tell me how I should change, and then to do that. What was it about him that led you to trust him enough to submit to his ideas like that and let him help you shape yourself?
Yeah, because he didn't want it for him. He wanted it for me. And I think that when you love someone so much that you want them to be free, no matter what, like free within yourself, that's when you can believe someone to really want that. That's when I knew, okay, he's sharing this and he's not leaving. He's not abandoning me in my muck. He's saying, I want you to be free from your muck so you can enjoy this precious life. And it's probably a lot easier than you think it is. It's just, again, like choosing to, get into it. Because I think that, at least what I've found is now I'm like a junkie for information. I love understanding. Like when you were saying parasympathetic, and I'm still trying to understand that the way that parasympathetic and sympathetic are those is that right?
Yep.
Like how it all operates and just.
Oh, I can tell you that if you ever want to know.
Yes, like we've got to hang out. I want more information. No, it's really it almost takes like the feeling out of it and gives us the understanding to understand why people are doing what they're doing, and it makes it less personal, if that makes sense. Like less of a personal
most people when we talk about like the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, how that's kicked on in childhood, and you learn I have to protect myself, I can't trust anybody else, but it's also somehow my fault and I don't deserve to be loved, so I can't trust people or me. And then you're just chronically in your sympathetic nervous system. It blocks your oxytocin receptors. You won't bond hormonally with other people in that safe, nurturing way. You will not feel safe. And when you don't have that oxytocin, you won't produce GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, which shuts down cortisol, prevents cortisol from flooding your system. So then it regulates you. So when you have secure attachment, you're in your parasympathetic, your rest and digest mode. You get tons of oxytocin, tons of GABA, low cortisol. You feel safe, you feel loved, and you associate it with healthy relationships. And when you've never experienced that, you don't know what's on offer. You don't know. So you're just stressed out all the time. You don't sleep. You have insomnia. You're constantly tracking risks. You're always afraid. And when you get into a relationship with a man, it's hard to let that guard down ever, because you're always afraid of screwing up or of them screwing up or hurting you or discarding you. So your oxytocin receptors don't open up. So you feel more mechanical. You're scared. You're worried. That's just a never-ending fear until you find someone who makes you feel so safe that you never have to be afraid in their presence again. You can be afraid if you choose to, but you never have to. And you're endlessly in your parasympathetic, so your oxytocin receptors open and you flood with oxytocin, which makes you even more scared than ever because now you're afraid of losing it, and then they reassure you that you can't lose it.
And that's the interesting thing, that fear actually becomes a choice, right? So when the fear is no longer the necessity and the only thing that keeps you safe, and it becomes a luxury, that changes the whole dynamic entirely. Yeah. And it sounds like for you, like you were living with a lot of fear in the first relationship, in the second relationship, in the after effect of the relationship, in the personal experience you've had. And eventually it sounds like you were kind of had to be given the luxury to be afraid if you want to be afraid. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and say what it actually is versus make something else the thing, which has nothing to do with anything, right? Whatever that's called,
Yeah.
No, it's very. like I chew on my words. I think through my thoughts more than I have in previous years with like, what is the purpose of what I'm about to say and how is it going to impact the person hearing it? Which I would never put that kind of like, the self filters through. And it's not from anything other than like, I don't want to hurt anyone and I won't hurt myself at the cost. Like there's ways to say things. And the ways I used to say things with my fight and flight and reaction were not always, I could be a little bit cutting, and especially with those personal relationships and the healthy ones. And it's just, there's no need to behave that way. And it didn't serve me. And I was just really I'm very fortunate that I have a very patient, loving husband that sees me beyond what was there. And now being able to be like on the other side, I'm like, whew.
That was wild.
I'm sure glad he stuck around for this Stephanie, because this Stephanie is the one we're going to live with.
Andre, you and I talk all the time about the power of a truly masculine man when he walks into a circumstance, when he's with a woman, when he's with a family, with a business, a really secure, truly masculine man who is master over himself and does not use it for domineering or tyranny or control, but just creates that massive, stable love and care for everyone around him where they can be free, and how that transforms people that just come into proximity, how that just changes everything for everyone around them.
Confirmation, yes, but there's one thing that actually has to be taken into account. If you are in a circumstance where your partner is going through this type of change, as Stephanie, you're describing, it's very, very, very volatile change. The essence to it all is that your partner has to see you exactly that, unconditional, right? He cannot see you as a threat nor anything that you're experiencing. And in fact, he has to have the biggest hope and the biggest vision and be your biggest cheerleader in that experience. And that, you know what? You're going to get through it. I believe in you. You're going to be fine. It's kind of like a coach. Frankly, he has to be kind of like your soccer coach.
No, he'll love that because he was a coach.
There you go.
So he'll get a big kick out of you because you're.
Well, you'd be surprised, actually. A lot of men who turn into this secure masculinity, most of them have gone through some form of either martial arts program or like a sports program, because that's where they've learned how to be coached themselves. They have that concept. So when they see somebody coming to them in that circumstance where they're distraught, they look at them, they assess them for what they're not just going to be experiencing now, but is there risk? Are you actually at risk of hurting yourself? And then secondly, is this just part of the journey, the transformation? And, if you need to experience something unpleasant as part of that transformation, no pain, no gain. We're here, let's go at your pace, but until A, B, and C happens, you're not going to feel better. Are we doing this today, tomorrow, or next week? Pick.
Right.
Very true. Or are we doing it? That makes a difference. A lot of men, they're part of the problem. Why? Because they see you as a risk, because it is conditional. And it's conditional because they say, well, I will only continue investing into you as long as I receive A, B, and C. And that means you can never relax. Because how can you trust somebody who says and openly proclaims that they will only be with you if there's certain things you will provide for them? Now, there's a big distinction, because there's a big distinction between being able to provide and just being. So loyalty is a non-negotiable, right? You say, I will only be with you if you're loyal to me and we're exclusive and monogamous. That you can stick to. But saying, I need you to always be happy. I want you to give me 3 back rubs a day. I want you to have sex 5 times a week with me. I want you to cook my dinners. Those are conditionals, are the ones that do not work.
I think most women are afraid to submit in the way that Stephanie has and ask their husband, how can I be a better wife? I think most women are afraid to ask that because they're afraid they're going to hear an answer like, breast implants.
Actually, yeah.
Get you signed up next week.
I'm glad you asked. Here's the list, right?
Right? Like, it's like, turn you into my perfect person to make my life easier. And I loved your answer was he doesn't want it for him. He wants it for me.
There was One experience I had with my girlfriend about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and she's been going through a little bit of a story similar to yours, different in many ways, but similar in some. And we were on a trip together, and she went, there was huge time changes. There was a lot of travel. It was like 15 hours of travel, and we finally arrived, foreign country. And then she has a hard day. She's tired. She's low energy. And in the evening, we're supposed to go out and see she's tired. And, we sit down and we talk. And she says, "Will you give me patience while I fix whatever's wrong with me?" And I go, "Babe, the only person who thinks there's anything wrong with you is you. And that's the only thing you're going to have to fix. And you can take as long as you want fixing this, but you're always going to get the same answer. And you can ask me one time, a million times. That's the only answer I'm ever going to give you." And that seemed like it made a difference. But ultimately, somebody has to believe in you more than you believe in yourself for this is to get better.
Well, and also I think too, sometimes people can lead us to believe they want us to be better, but then we actually make the change. They kind of keep us in
just
what
sounded
we were
nice
because that was more comfortable. To your point, it really has to be, this mutual, unconditional, like, I've got you, you've got me thing, because I don't even know how it would work any other way. I don't know how it would even possibly.
Well, that's not love at that point. It could be a friendship. It's interesting that everybody assumes that a friendship is supposed to be eternal. This person you met today, if you guys click, you're going to be friends for 50 years. Most friendships will last 2 to 5 years. Some might last 10 years. Like maybe 1 or 2 might last a lifetime. And we should be able to allow friendships to expire. And that's a friendship where you say, "Hey, you're really convenient for me in this point. Once you get to like point B, I'd really love to see you there. But if you start progressing down this path, you're no longer going to be a fit." There's nothing wrong with that. Walk alongside each other for 3, 4, 5 years and then part ways, right? But that's the difference between a relationship and a friendship at this point, is that the relationship is that eternal commitment as opposed to just a temporary companionship. So people get stuck on that. Now, Stephanie, I want to actually roll this back all the way to the beginning of this conversation, because there's something I really wanted to ask you before we get into, kind of start wrapping up for the end of the podcast, and is this. So a lot of our listeners have experienced what's called no contact, right? Are you familiar with no contact?
No, tell me.
Oh man, you want to explain?
No contact. Yeah. So I don't like it personally, but it's very popular right now. No contact is after you break up, you should go a period of time not speaking at all and set it to 2 months, 3 months, whatever it might be, before you have any contact. And then you are supposed to reinitiate contact at that point to try to reset the relationship and make everything better. And the idea is that just not talking to each other makes everything better. Now, part of it is trying to shake off oxytocin bonding, which doesn't really work. Really all it does is create a big artificial gap where you guys could have conversations. And again, the premise is that you're going to have a cooler head when you try to have the conversation, but all it usually does, I think, is kill the opportunity for those things. But it's extremely popular, and a lot of women are jumping into that right now. When they break up with a relationship, they go no contact, and then they're like, and all they do is think about the person every single day for 3 months, waiting to reestablish contact, basically.
So the reason why I'm asking this is a lot of women are doing that, but also a lot of men are doing it back to the woman. They will break up and they just ghost. They're gone. They're gone in the wind.
Indefinite no contact.
It's
just out.
So a lot of women also do the same thing. You get the breakup text. Next thing you know, boom, you're blocked on all platforms. They just disappear. And people sometimes say it's actually exactly as Adam said. It's good to get that disconnection so that you can get that closure, right? And the idea is that you're supposed to be alone to get that closure and whatnot. But ultimately what happened with the first relationship you had and the tragic death is that you experienced the ultimate no contact, right? There was no more contact after that. And I was just wondering, in a situation like that, which is the finite no contact, how did that go for you? And how did you cope with that?
Great question. I also have so many questions. So, but I'll start with yours. So there's when he the way in which he died, I never saw his body. I was working with the coroner with the dental reports, which in the way that the plane crashed was the only thing that was able to identify his body, identify him. But something in my brain for about 6 months after he died still wasn't sure that he was dead. And I would have dreams. I would have dreams about him that were just wildly vivid. And then I would see people that looked like him on the street. And it was just my mind was just trying to go through that. Right. And I, of course, posed the question many times in my mind, like, had he not died, would he have confessed? Would he have told me the truth? Would he have? Would he have? Would he have? And I ended up writing a song about that. And it's very hard for me to sing. It's really interesting to create an album that's like the most pivotal album of my human side, and there's a lot of it that I don't have a desire to sing because I don't want to relive that.
It's a one-time experience.
Yeah. And the song is like, would you, if you knew it was your last breath, like, would you have been honest? Because I've been very curious, right? Like, if he hadn't have died, was it coming to that moment where that was, I don't know, right? And I never will. And everyone has theories. So, I found that so we're in 2024. So he died on January 28th of 2009. And I realized that last year, as I was like the book and I'm talking about all these things, that I hadn't forgiven him. And what that did for me was it gave me back so much life just saying those words, and really not frivolously, like having a heartfelt, like, I forgive you. And what that did for his daughter, had I known what that simple, complex sentence would have meant to her, I would have done it years and years ago. But I wasn't ready. But what it gave her was something that it's not tangible, but it was like she was waiting for that. And that then in turn showed me that I hadn't forgiven myself. And so last summer, I was just like, why am I so angry? And it wasn't at anyone. It was, and no one's sick. Everything's fine. But there was this anger inside of me I could not understand. And it was making me mad. My anger was making me mad, going like, what is this? And it was, you haven't forgiven yourself. And then I was like, that time and the revelation for me of figuring that out gave me just, okay, I will forgive myself. And that took the time that it took. So now, and I don't know if this takes it back to our no contact, but I don't wrestle like I used to when people leave my life. I don't wrestle with what did I do? I really allow it to be just like you said, like, if people walk beside you and sometimes they stick around and sometimes they don't, I don't internalize that. And I'm the first one to own my stuff though, man. If I've screwed up, I want to know, and I want to know from you, right? If I've not done it right, then I need to know so I can, fix that and do the right thing. I am a real big fan of courageous confrontation. Kind, courageous confrontation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where I probably am a little adjacent to this no contact. I think that, when we aren't able to look someone in the eye and say, hey, this is not working and this is not what I wanted and I thought it was going to be different and it just isn't working. When you can look someone in the eye and take that time and honor that, then I think you can have no contact. I think that's a real clean, like a clean break, you know? I guess I don't know that I would, I don't know that, I mean, 3 months, I'd be like, peace. I'd be like, if I didn't, hear from someone for 3 months, now, not that like if they came back into my world that I, as a friend, if it was a friend that had just like disappeared or ghosted, but I feel like in a relationship sense, I don't know that
That's
I
not
would
cool.
be,
That's not cool
I
at
don't
all.
think
That's
I'd
weird.
be very cool with this,
No.
like this ghosting business. I'm not a real fan. I like this.
Yeah.
I want to, I want to see your face and I want to hear your words because there might be something that I can learn or take away from.
It's also
But that's
time,
kind of,
right?
adult.
It's like just give that person the time back. Because I guess the real question underneath my first question was, how much of a difference would it have made to you in your recovery and your resolution of your attachment and just your overall journey if you could have had, a 5-minute or 10-minute conversation with your man before he died to close all of those items off?
Oof, I don't know. I really don't know.
I will say really quick. I mean, and I people ask me that all the time. Not to interrupt, but they ask me all the time, like, Adam, can I get closure if I talk to him? Could he give me closure? Do you think that can help? Should I? And my answer to them is, look, if that was the kind of person who could give you closure, you wouldn't be in the situation you're in right now.
Yeah. I think that in this case, I was probably my greatest closure.
Yeah. So it's never really is about the other person giving you that answer. It's about finding it yourself, right?
Yeah, I think we have so much more capacity to manage ourselves in the best way for ourselves. I think we give a lot of our power away and a lot of meaning like, well, I'll only be okay if this person tells me I'm okay and they say they're sorry. Right? Versus like, you know what? I screwed up. I'm going to forgive myself. I am not going to let this guilt move into shame, which I was so good at. I mean, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but I'd be so curious. And when I went to my little emotional rehab, I remember one of the psychologists talking about when guilt turns into shame. And I had been one of those people that I am the mistake.
Yeah.
Versus I made a mistake. And so what was really interesting during that course of that week was going, wow, just the difference in a couple words. I screwed up. I made a mistake. I screwed up. I am the mistake. Woo! That burns different.
Yes. One is attachment. One is anxious attachment. I am the mistake, and there's something in me that is unlovable, and it will always screw everything up, and people will always see it, and they will always abandon me for it because I don't even deserve it. Versus, wow, I did something really stupid. Can you forgive me, and then can we make up for it and move on? Is there actually hope? One has hope, and one does not have hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've made some mistakes, even in the last year.
You're a human?
Sometimes. And, I made some mistakes in the last year, and I was just really mad at myself. And there was a point when I just had to make those decisions like, okay, I can allow myself to be really mad at myself for the next little while, or I can try to rationalize it out. And I said, So for about 45 minutes, I'd sit in the dark and just be really pissed. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, I've been mad at myself. I'm now ready to forgive myself. And giving myself the 45 minutes. And Annalise was walking by. She said, can I give you a hug? I'm like, nope, I'm mad at myself right now. I deserve no hugs for the next 30 minutes.
We're gonna tape off a corner for you.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It's gonna be your brooding corner. It'll be perfect.
It made all the difference.
I think there's something powerful though about, and I exercise this as well. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but I feel like it is to, man, if I'm in it, I'm going to be in it for the moment I'm in it. I'm going to honor it. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to experience it. Maybe not outwardly, but I'm going to go take my little time out, and just all right. And if I need to punch a pillow, I'm going to punch a pillow.
Oh yeah.
Because you cannot break a hand punching a pillow in my experience, and, and just get it out. Because I also find that if I hold it in, I get sick. Nobody else.
Yep.
I get physically sick. And I just am just want to be like, I don't want to miss a moment. So I don't want to be sick for it's like one thing if you like get sick because someone else or whatever. But I mean, like, anything that can be self-induced, I'm like, all right, let's get it out. My husband's like, you good? I'm like, yep, I'm going to go handle some business. And I do think there's something to that even if it's, it's like 45 minutes, 60 seconds, whatever it is, that we have to give ourselves that grace because we sure give it to everybody else,
Everyone else gets to be a human being, but not us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the process.
That's right. Wow. That's been such a wonderful conversation, Stephanie. It's fantastic. Thank you for sharing great stories and just the earnesty and the openness are wonderful.
Thank you for being so authentic for the women and probably men out there in the audience who have had exactly the same feelings that you've had, who have never had a name for it, didn't know that they could be any different, and are probably just right now hearing this, probably crying a little bit, to be honest with you, that there's actually some hope in
Maybe
their
punching a pillow safely.
Punching a pillow.
I'm grateful for the space. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to learn so much more because there's just so much to understand and learn. And it takes us out of the, we're all in this together. No one is an island when it comes to the business of the mind and the heart. And it's really something.
It's true.
Yeah, it's more of a hobby than a business at this point. So that's good. Stephanie, where can we find you? And tell us a little bit about the book that is out.
Yes. So the book is called Why Do We Stay?
Why do?
And yep. And it's available anywhere you get books. And I do know that the Audible right now is, and it's in our voices, which is really, I think, a special way to hear and not like in the voice of the authors. And that's available.
Authors, plural?
Authors, yeah. So Keith Campbell, who is the expert in narcissism, he speaks to it. So as you're reading my story, he is interjecting all of the information that, I didn't even know what any of this stuff was called. I just thought,
when
no,
YouTube
this
was
is
young.
just, this is just a relationship. This is just, they're all jacked up. Which is, I'm excited for the book to find its way because it's out there living. And then my music is everywhere. So anywhere you listen to music. And then my website, stephaniequayle.com, is for all tour dates and places I'm speaking, and social media. We all have it. It's a tool. It's a tool. Mm-hmm. So we use the tool. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. We're going to link all of that below. And Adam, where can we find you?
I am Adam Lane Smith, the attachment specialist. I'm on adamlanesmith.com. You're going to find my courses about how to fix your attachment. You're going to find my attachment repair program with me and my certified coaches that'll help you through this for life and give you better relationships and teach you all the things your parents either didn't teach you or didn't know how to teach you, so that you can fill those skill gaps and build those relationships that you don't even know are possible for you.
Yeah, amazing.
I'm going to be sharing your link with so many people.
Oh, please.
Well, thank you.
Well, with Adam, we have this whole mission, and we're building Adam's business together, and we're building his brand together, and we have this mission and vision of 1 billion securely attached people.
1 billion.
That's right.
If we can teach 1 billion, then they can teach the rest of them. We just got to hit 1 billion.
Yeah.
That's all.
Adam calls me up last week and he goes, "Well, we're on the mission to securely attach, 1 billion, this or other." And then he says, "I also heard they found a planet. Do you think they're securely attached?" I'll go like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, maybe there's like an Adam Lane Smith there too, but just like with these like green spikes."
Yeah.
I go like, "Yeah, we should probably adjust our mission. Say 1 billion securely attached humans, people,
or on Earth specifically."
On Earth. That's right. Narrow it down a little bit. So
that's an incredible, achievable goal.
I think so. We think it's achievable. We think that
with many hands, it would be achievable.
With social media, with many hands, with technology, with this type of conversations, we've noticed that a lot of time people actually need modeling more than anything. During the first stages of this podcast, we brought a lot of experts on, fantastic experts. Oh, yeah. And we've noticed then when we talk to these experts, people listen, but they don't understand. They don't really hear with their body, with their heart, with their mind. But when we speak to people like yourself who truly have a story they're open to sharing, like everybody resonates, everybody can experience it. It actually becomes like music, right? Where it's how you say it that matters so much more than even what you say. And that's one thing that we're learning as
Teach-
we're going through this.
Teaching through storytelling. Turns
Yeah.
out it works. Someone should get
Start a
on that.
campfire.
No, they've been doing that for a little while.
A little while. That's right.
So it seems to be a good way to recall. Yeah.
Yeah. I love all of it. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on I Wish You Knew, and everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.